Welcome back to the Metal Exchange. Justin and Chris here with you for another week. Another career retrospective as we go to Denmark and cover progressive metal band VOLA, a band I don't believe we've really discussed that much on the podcast. So this should be an interesting one. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. I think the only time we've mentioned this band is when I thought they were Soen and said the name wrong, and vice versa. But I think I actually now have a much better grasp of which one's which. So
nice. I'm glad to hear it. This is going to be an interesting one for sure. For reasons I'll get to in a little bit. But before I do, I wanted to just mention a couple of things that kind of came across my plate that I think people might be interested in. The first is a band out of Phoenix, Arizona, of all places. And I say that to say you don't expect melodic death metal to be really kind of hitting the shores of Phoenix. But alas, we have a band called The Shores of Ithaca, and they've just released an EP called Those Chosen. If you like Insomnium, go check these guys out. For a debut EP, or what I believe to be a debut EP, quite a remarkable job by these guys. 5 songs coming in about 41 minutes. Quite good. And then moving a little further east, a band out of Greece called Mistfall has released their debut album on Scarlet Records. The album is called Celestial Vision. It's about 9 tracks. And I guess on the heels of our Ad Infinitum retrospective that we did earlier this month, if you like that style, I think you'll enjoy Mistfall from Greece as well.
Yeah, I listened to the one of the singles just yesterday, actually, when I'm working my way through busting out another playlist, and that one made the cut on your suggestion. So that was good. I like that. Another band that in a similar vein that kind of reached out to us and asked us to give a listen to their stuff is a band called Terminal Dusk. Where did I say they were from? Portland, Oregon, I believe.
Yeah, it's somewhere out west, but definitely from the States.
Yeah, and it's kind of this. It's definitely very symphonic. Has a little bit of a gothic style. They have a new EP called Marionette. There's 2 original tracks, and then this really cool, dark kind of gothic-y cover of John Lennon's Imagine called Reimagine. So I thought I would throw that out there. So if you're into that kind of symphonic metal, they're definitely a cool band, and you should check them out. I'm not mentioning them because they asked us to listen to their stuff. I mentioned them because I actually enjoyed them. If I didn't, I wouldn't mention it at all. So that was something I thought was worth pointing out. But I will have this playlist out hopefully soon, and it will have the one of the singles from the Stream of Passion EP, which is coming out, I believe, in September. I'm looking forward to hearing that, and I do believe another track from that is set to drop sometime in the very near future. I'm sure we'll mention it in some form or fashion when it does. And I finally got to listen to the new Pyramids album, and I enjoyed that quite a bit. Not that was really to be unexpected, since they've been pretty consistent, especially their last handful of albums. I think it's going to most likely end up on my year-end list, but I enjoyed that quite a bit in my my struggle to catch up on stuff. I also finally listened to Sacred Outcry, and I like that a lot as well. Always good to hear Daniel Hyman's voice, but that was good too. I definitely plan on going back to that, and also the new Scar Symmetry I thought was quite good as well. Definitely getting more used to MDM type stuff, and I actually like this quite a bit. And I mentioned it on our group chat that we had a couple days ago that my tastes have changed, and this is something that I probably wouldn't have been able to even make it through the first song at one point, and now I actually quite enjoy it. So that's just some of the stuff that I listen to. I shockingly managed to listen to some things other than VOLA in the last couple weeks.
Yeah, I have to say it's been a it's been an interesting month for us because I think we've done like 3 career retrospectives in a matter of 5 or 6 weeks, which is more difficult than it sounds. Because
4. Count. Don't forget Halo Effect.
Oh yeah, that's true. How could I forget the band that has the one album? But yeah, 4 in a row in that sense. But yeah, I know you referenced our Patreon chat earlier. For those that are new to the podcast, we have a Patreon. We invite you to check out the links below. Help support the show, obviously. And if you're not interested in joining the Patreon, that's okay. Tell a friend. Make more people listen, and that will obviously help others find the show. So thank you for that. But as we shift gears, this was a really interesting look back at this Danish prog, dare I say, metal band. I think that a lot of this stuff is borderline metal. A lot of it's just prog rock or alt rock in certain spots as well. They kind of do a nice job of blending genres. But I have to admit, I was very familiar with their last 2 albums, but I had never heard their debut album or any of the releases before that. So for me, this was in many ways like a new listening experience, and then kind of putting on like a warm blanket with the last 2 releases that I was kind of intimately familiar with. Was this the first time that you listened to? VOLA?
I hope you're kidding, or maybe I.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I've spread my disease.
No. I was just timely because I think the last time you mentioned them, you were talking about the new Sown album, so that's why. Why I say.
There you go. Very, very little. I do recall hearing friends of ours mention them in high regard. I believe Pat was one of the big fans, constantly talking about taking a dip in the Ruby pool. Now I finally know what the hell he was talking about all that time. I had the song "Inside Your Fur" on a playlist from 2021 towards the end of the year, and you had actually. It was on your January playlist in 2022, which means that the album was on your list that year, which I did not even remember that. But I think I might have had one other song that had made a Stare Without Eyes from In Mazes I had on a playlist in 2020, early on that year. But honestly, beyond those 2 songs, like this was a real, a brand new listen for pretty much all of it. And it was interesting because I kind of split my listening up into 2 groups. There's 2 EPs and a single along with the first album, In Mazes. That was kind of my week 1 homework. And then my week 2 homework was the 2 more recent albums. And it kind of, it split it up fairly even, I would say.
I think it was a good point to split them up because, in my opinion, their sound drastically changes after the debut album. I'll give my opinions as to whether that was a good thing or a bad thing in a little bit. But I was shocked as I went back and listened to that early stuff because, it was just not what I was expecting from a band who, I knew those last 2 albums. I think, if I'm not mistaken, their most recent album, Witness, was maybe around 44 or 43 on my top 50 list. It definitely wasn't my album of the year, but I recognized that I liked it. But yeah, this was a really interesting journey for me. So let me start by kind of getting to the beginning, right? This band forms in and around 2006 in the suburbs of Copenhagen. And long and the short of it is a lot of these guys that were in the band were friends that attended a local music school together. So almost like Dream Theater attending Berkeley up in Boston. Here's a bunch of Danish musicians that were in school together and obviously had an affinity for heavy rock or prog music. And what's interesting, I think, is that no matter what era of this band you talk about, this doesn't sound like Dream Theater. Like this is, there's definitely prog here, and I'll mention some of the bands that I kind of hear sprinkled throughout, but they kind of have a sound unto themselves, which is kind of remarkable this day and age.
Couldn't agree more. I was a little bit kind of taken aback because I spent a whole week listening to this earlier material, and then second week goes by and I'm like, oh, this is almost like a totally different band in a lot of ways, because I kind of found that some of the early stuff kind of gave me this Poets of the Fall meets modern Voyager kind of vibe. But then there's parts where the vocals reminded me of Dave Grohl. Like it was really interesting. It was a really interesting listen. And then when I went to listen to the back half of things, at first I didn't really like it because I was so tuned into what I listened to that first week. But as I listened to all of it, I ended up really liking pretty much all of it for totally different reasons. But I really am looking forward to talking about this band just because it's not going to feel like we're just repeating the same thing for three albums and 2 EPs and all this stuff. I think there's so much variety in their music that
I completely agree with you. And for that reason, I've actually been looking forward to this chat, but I was a little not concerned because ultimately I love the fact that you always give an honest assessment, even if it is Anthrax. But I guess what I was concerned about is I would not lump some of this stuff into, we'll call it Circus Maximus accessible prog, right? Like some of this stuff is kind of off the beaten path. Not just because the choruses and the verses kind of jump around, but even the instrumental sections. It's not that it's weird, but it's eclectic. And for that reason, I didn't know if you'd, kind of gravitate towards this stuff. Or I thought what you were going to say is, I like this song, I don't like this song, and kind of really just bounce around like a pinball. But it sounds like you liked it by and large more than I thought you would.
I don't know that there's really any songs that I would have outright didn't like.
Then we're going to have a difference of opinion because I actually, you know what? No better time than now. Why don't we start jumping into it? I'll just give I'll give the history and kind of weave it through as we go album by album or release by release. As I had mentioned, the band kind of comes together in and around 2006. Then it was formed by the vocalist and guitar player Asker Mygend, who I believe, not only believe, he's still in the band. He's kind of the driving force behind a lot of this. And at the time that he formed the band, Martin Werner, who is not only interesting and phenomenal keyboard player, but a driving force for this band, and I mean a real driving force for this band. They kind of formed the band. The drummer at the time, at least for those first few EPs, was a guy by the name of Niklas Schwerfig, and he would leave the band, and there'd be some new drummers along the way. And the band would also originally employ another guitar player by the name of Niels Dreiser, but ultimately he was kind of short-lived for the band. He'd leave by around 2012. So that kind of sets the stage for where we go. But in 2006, they release an EP called Homesick Machinery. And I'll just kind of I'll kind of just lead with this. Of the first 2 EPs, I preferred this quite a bit to the second one. I thought this was a really interesting first release for a band. And obviously, like I said, I had never heard it before, but what I can say is this thing showed all the potential that was there in many ways, at least in terms of the songwriting. I think the production was kind of weak. I'll just put that out there. But what were your initial impressions when you heard this EP going back to 2008? I can't believe this thing is 15 years old.
It's wild. It's also, I was a little surprised that they had so much like small releases before their first album came out, because a single and a couple of EPs. I agree. I enjoyed the first EP more than the second EP, not by a ton, but I definitely think it has a little bit more of an accessible kind of sound to it. And the songs, even just the 4 songs, each have their own kind of flavor to them. Some sound like old WCW theme music, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure. But I found myself enjoying the first EP right away, as obviously it was the first thing that I listened to. So it really was, in a lot of ways, like my first experience really listening to the band in any sense, any sort of extended capacity. So, the first track like the Rainbow, is just, it's got this kind of the kind of like haunting, slow, but like a very pervasive drum beat to it, and it's just kind of like this real so, I don't know how to explain it. Maybe you could explain it better, but it's like this like kind of this mellow, mid-tempo kind of proggy kind of tune, and I just think it's really kind of a cool way to start the album off, because like when you get to the next track is like a lot crunchier.
Yeah.
Than this. So
They started off with this like slow, almost like ephemeral tune. It reminds me of like a mix between Riverside and Anathema, but it lulls you into a false sense of comfortability because, like you said, the next track is nothing like it. But this was an interesting choice to start, like the Rainbow. Really cool drum beats. I think you actually get to see like kind of the just an interesting way to kind of set the tone. And a lot of this had an electronic vibe to it, which would be a common theme throughout a lot of their music. But yeah, this is really more prog rock than prog metal. And then you contrast that with the Avalanche, the second tune, which is, like you said, crunchier, almost alt rock feel to it. And I know what you're going to say in terms of what this makes you think of. I hear Silverchair, the Australian band. So if you go back to like Frog Stomp, some of that heavier, almost thrashier stuff on that alt rock album, that's the one with the big frog on the cover. That's what this reminded me of. And I got to be honest with you, I love that album in 1995 or whatever it was. So I kind of like this tune. Definitely one of the better tunes on the EP, I think.
Yeah, so like it reminded me of Chris Jericho's second theme in WCW, which was a ripoff of Even Flow by Pearl Jam. So like if you make that circle, like the opening riff is Pearl Jam-esque. But then I think once the song kicks in, yeah, you're right. Like there's the chorus really has a 90s alt rock kind of vibe. Silverchair is a really good example of that. So yeah, like even I think there's going to be an overarching sentiment that this band bounces all over the place throughout its career, but right from the first two tracks, we're already bouncing.
Right. I mean, we were literally going from modern, in many ways, modern prog rock to 90s alt rock in two tracks. And the third track, Giants, is really no different. This one, very melodic, a touch faster than the prior two, I think. But this one kind of engages you immediately. There's no build here. It kind of just punches you in the face from the start. And then all of a sudden the band kind of fades out and you hear this lone guitar sound with the drums behind it before the rest of the band comes back in. The highlight for me here is the chorus. Obviously some very, very heavy riffs. But what struck me as interesting is I thought this was one of the better well-written tunes, and for a band that was just coming into their own, you could see that they had like the songwriting chops, because this is just a really cool song, a very cool atmospheric instrumental section. It was kind of reminded me of some of the stuff that they would do on later albums, but Giants is a cool tune. I liked it.
Yeah, same. It kind of gave me a little bit of a like an early 2000s kind of hard rock radio kind of vibe. But it's probably the first song on the EP or of any song we're going to talk about from this band that actually has kind of a metal vibe to it. Because the first song kind of was like a prog rock. The second song was kind of like a alt rock. And now we have a little bit more metal kind of touches into it. I thought it was interesting because I went to the metal archives to like look some stuff up, and they're not even in it.
Yes, I'm so happy you mentioned that. What a surprise! Like, I don't know, I still consider them a prog metal band, but they are not on Metal Archives. So
yeah, because like Riverside is, so and like Riverside's not terribly different as far as like heaviness goes compared
I would
to this
argue
band.
that the heavier VOLA material is heavier than the heaviest Riverside material.
It's just I've always found it kind of fascinating how they choose like what goes like Amaranth used to be on there, and they took Amaranth off because they consider them a core band, I guess, and core bands don't fit. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to go into a whole thing about it. It's a little strange to me. I guess also like if you start expanding what genres can go on here, then it's just gonna be everything at the end of the day. So I guess there has to be some lines somewhere. I just don't quite understand, who decides where the lines go and why they're there. But
find myself asking that question in life a lot.
Well, thankfully Wikipedia had some information, so I was able to use that, I guess. But yeah, it's tough sometimes finding information on bands if they're not on Metal Archives and they're not popular enough to have a Wikipedia entry. So
yeah, I totally agree. And then let's wrap up the EP with a ballad, because what else would you do with a song like Fragments? So they're really touching all the bases here. Nice acoustic guitar sound, very, very soothing vocals on top. And it kind of leaves you wanting more, but in a good way. Like, if this is the end of the EP, you want to hear more from this band. And I think that they do a good job of kind of putting themselves out there. And I have to think that this helped them get signed later on, just because it really does run the whole gamut of what they were doing at the time. Any thoughts on Fragments?
Yeah, it's the fourth genre of the EP, indie rock.
Yeah, exactly. And kudos to them. But top to bottom, a solid release. Not earth-shattering, but a very solid release. I gave it a 7.0 out of 10. I don't know about you. What about you?
I didn't actually think about what I would rate the EPs, but yeah, I'd say that's right around where I'm at as well. I would say that as well.
Yeah. And then, so after the EPs are released, there's some lineup changes, and Block and Schwerfig are replaced by Nikolai Morgensen and Felix Ewert, respectively. And they basically go into the studio and they release another EP called Monsters. But before they do, they come out with a standalone single called Glasswork. And again, another song I had never heard. I didn't even know this existed until you brought it to my attention. What did you think of this standalone single in 2010?
I liked it a lot. I think I actually liked it more than anything on the first EP. It's again, it kind of has like a modern radio rock kind of vibe to it, but it's just this. It's got this kind of almost quiet, kind of mid-tempo feel to it, and then about halfway through, all of a sudden, like, the guitars jump in and it starts to get kind of crunchy. But I was glad that I found out that this existed, thanks to the VOLA's Bandcamp page. That's how I was able to find out that it existed. So I grabbed it, and I'm glad that I did, because it's a really good tune. What did you think of it?
I thought it was not only their best song to date going through the discography, but I thought it was their best song for quite some time, or at least for this early era of the band. I thought it was great. I like how they focus on the song and not like the wankery that you get from other prog bands, because even the instrumental sections, there's like a deliberate purpose to them. And even though it's prog, the entire catalog is really just a slew of 4 and 5 minute songs. You're not getting any 13-minute epics here. And that's okay, because they seem to jam a lot into those 4 or 5 minute tunes. And I think Glasswork is a great example. There's a lot of nuances here to pick up on. And one of my favorite songs, I wish they would play this live. I'm willing to bet they don't and won't. But really solid tune. And 1 year later, they would come out with the Monsters EP, which again was their second EP before their first full-length release. I have thoughts on this, but before I get there, how did you find that Monsters overall compared with the debut Homesick?
It was like a different band. Like, this was way more. I'm going to steal the word that you used when I talked to you during the week. Gentier.
Yes.
It felt like I was. This really reminded me of some of the more modern Voyager stuff. I didn't dislike it, but I liked the first EP and that first single just a touch more. Although the last track on the EP is probably easily my favorite of the 4 tracks. But I thought this was solid, but not quite where I was hoping the direction of the band would go after the first 5 tracks, for the first 5 songs. But it seems like it's kind of an outlier when moving forward in their catalog, and it's a 4-track EP, so I guess you can't be like like super judgmental about it, but I thought it was okay.
Not my favorite piece of music. I am extremely picky with that djenty sound. I think of a band like Shattered Skies, and I really liked that, what they did with the 7-string guitars and whatnot, but here it was kind of a miss for me. So I'll kind of go through the tracks one by one, and I want to go through all the songs, but overall, this was not my favorite release, although I did love one of the tracks. But anyway, it starts with a song called I Am Not Here. Very, very heavy and djenty at the chart, and I think at the start. And I think that when you have that thick guitar tune sound, you either love it or hate it. And I'm just typically not the biggest fan of it. I can deal with it, but what is interesting is that the verses are kind of slow and prog rocky, and then all of a sudden that chorus kicks in, and it is a thick sound. Just a little too djenty for me. I like the atmospheric sessions, but not so much the djentiness of it. The chorus grew on me a little bit, but not my favorite tune.
Yeah, it's interesting how they kind of go back and forth between like this like mellow prog rock type sound to like this Tesseract-y kind of sound. But yeah, it's okay. I kind of like the next track a bit better, Black Box.
Yeah, it's a touch more.
This is, by the way, this is one of the ones where I thought that the vocals sounded a bit like Dave Grohl.
Interesting, and I can hear that, and I'll explain why. This is a touch more upbeat, still heavy, but a little less djenty. Touch of it, but not quite as overpowering. The drums popped again like crazy, but I got like, I'll say it this way, strong 2000-ish alt-rock vibes. So like, again, to your point, maybe Foo Fighters, right? Like this is, when they were kind of hitting their stride, putting aside all the 90s stuff, I definitely preferred this to the first tune. The instrumental section, it kind of lost me a little bit. It wasn't so good, but I do like the bridge. So there are elements of this song that I definitely enjoyed more, but overall, I still prefer some of the stuff on the first EP and obviously the single.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I think it's a pretty good tune, and yeah, like I think there's another song coming up on In Mazes that again I got like major Dave Grohl vibes. But I wonder if anybody else ever kind of made that connection with the vocals. It's not really pervasive, but here and there, and this track is one of them.
Yeah, and to that point, I think the vocals throughout their entire discography improves. Like, not to say that it was bad early on, but I think that over time you really got to see a progression in terms of the way that he uses his voice almost as an instrument in ways. Because by the last album, I thought it was just like top-notch vocals, and I really look forward to seeing some of this stuff live. But I just wanted to kind of shoehorn that in here. The third track on this EP is called Controllable, and this is right back to that djenty sound. There's some cool electronic sound effects, and there's definitely a quirky, like modern prog rock vibe here. It's an intriguing song. I don't know if I love it or hate it, but I guess I don't love it because I would know if I loved it. So it's kind of hit or miss for me. It's very enigmatic, and it kind of just keeps the listener guessing throughout. Your thoughts?
I like it a bit more when it gets into like the bridge and the chorus. I think some of the verses are just a little bit that weird kind of like electronic vocals and stuff. It's again, it's kind of comparable to the first track where it just is like this really kind of heavy gent kind of sound, and even some a little bit of a screaminess happening, which you don't get a ton of in VOLA songs. But yeah, it's a solid tune, if not unremarkable.
Yeah, I agree. And you kind of alluded to this earlier. The EP ends with a song called Enter. This song I liked a lot. I thought that this was far and away the best song on the EP, and I don't know that it was really close. It's upbeat, it's melodic, it's djenty, but only in spots. It's not pervasive throughout the whole song. And the verses have like a bit of an industrial sound to them, almost reminded me of I don't know, like Ministry or something like that. But then these cool bass lines, And as you'd expect on a track like this, a big, bright chorus that really kind of took things home for me. Definitely my favorite, and I'm sure you'd agree.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite songs of everything up to this point, honestly. I thought it might be better than anything from the first EP for me. I'm not I don't know if I could 100% sure say, but boy, I would love to hear this one live. It looks like in recent times they have played I Am Not Here from this EP live, but I haven't seen much else from this or the previous EP or single. So I think this is definitely the star song of the EP. I think it's far and away the best song of the four.
Yeah, complete agreement. Throw you another curveball. Scale of 1 to 10. What would you rate this EP? Just kind of curious.
I would give it a 6.5. I think it's not. I don't think that it's like a lot worse than the first EP, but it's not as it's not as cohesive for me. Although I think the last track is definitely holding that rating up a little bit higher than it would have been without it.
It's a 6 for me. It's certainly not something I can't listen to. But without that last song, I probably would not go back to this. But it's at the end, so you almost kind of get through the other stuff to get to the end of the EP. But it's a decent score, maybe an average score, maybe a little below average. But I think that what you can say is that after 9 songs from this band, you really have no idea what the fuck to expect because they're all over the place. And that doesn't change with their debut album In Mazes. And, this album comes out in 2015. It's self-released, which I thought was really, really interesting because it sounds pretty good for a self-released album. It's mastered by, or I should say it's mixed by Majin, the guitar player and vocalist, but it's mastered by Jens Bogren, who we've talked about on this podcast because he's done work with Opeth and Catatonia and Soilwork. So they took the time and the energy to spend some money on this debut release, even though it was self-released. The irony, though, is I had never heard of the band. So, I don't think I knew these guys existed, and I'm pretty in tune with the prog stuff. But this was new to me, and I only really gave it a good listen this week because, again, I knew their last 2 albums, but I was not familiar with the debut release. So it was an interesting journey. I have to say I like the other 2 albums better, but there are some really good tracks on here.
I am, I'm still kind of formulating my scores for these albums as we talk through them. But this was, my first full length VOLA experience, full length album experience, and I really dug it. I think that it has a little bit more crunch to it than the 2 albums that follow do. They're more on the prog side than this one has a little bit more, again, of a little bit of that alt rock vibe that we got on the first EP. Again, even on the first track, The Same War, I'm getting that Dave Grohl kind of vocal, similarity. But I'm really excited to heir your thoughts because it sounds like we have about the same amount of experience listening to this record.
Yeah, it was my expertise will kick in with the next album, but here I'll just kind of share some of my thoughts. The first tune, The Same War, I hear Alice in Chains, which was not what I was expecting to hear at all when I put this thing on. But all of a sudden, you have these vocals that are kind of low in the mix, and then the chorus just hits you out of nowhere. It's almost jarring in a way, and it has definitely a modern prog feel. But then with harkening back to mid '90s Alice in Chains, it's kind of a trippy tune, but a solid opener. I like it. I mean, somehow it seems to work for me.
I will say, we've talked about a lot lately about the live keyboardist. Is there going to be a live keyboardist for Beast in Black? I mean, there probably isn't going to be, but this is a band where I presume there will be, and I don't know that this band wouldn't be right for them to not have a live keyboardist because there's so many, and this song especially, there's so many just keyboard laden orchestrations that are laying the groundwork for a lot of these songs. And I feel like having the keyboard player there in person is really going to add to the live experience. I'm actually super stoked to see this band live now, which was the whole goal of this episode in the first place. I just wanted to be excited because if, Milton is going to book a band second to last on Thursday night, then clearly, they're probably going to be a pretty good band. Sometimes I just need to take the time to listen. And I did the same thing last year with, Pain of Salvation's Perfect Element. And I ended up just really enjoying that set. So sometimes you just have to prep yourself. But I think this is going to be really cool. And, it's interesting that the band that follows is going to be the one that does not have the keyboard player on stage.
I mean, I'm just throwing it out there. If the guy plays keyboards for VOLA and Beast in Black needs a keyboard player, I'm just freestyling here, but
just don't leave the stage.
Yeah, just stay on the stage. You can leave the keyboard out there. Again, Milton, I know you're listening. Just putting it out there. The second track on the album is called Stray the Skies, and I think this is a song that there's a pretty good chance that we're going to hear live because they still play this one. This is an amazing tune that kind of grabs you right away. I've got this very simple riff, but the lush keyboard melodies on top are what hooked me. I don't love the mix, but the song itself is great, and I can't wait to hear it live. Top-notch chorus, maybe the best on the album. Good stuff.
I love the verses at the beginning of the song. The verse is like this industrial sounding kind of like almost Devin Townsend-esque song, and then it just goes into like this really catchy, beautiful chorus. It's a really interesting tune. This was one of my favorite songs on this album, and I actually really enjoyed the October session version of it. That was I don't know if it was a bonus track or an EP or whatever, but they did kind of like a more chill version of this, and that version is really cool too. But I thought this was a strong tune. I like this one a lot, and I'll be excited to hear it live for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And to that end, I think they're going to play 90 minutes, and if they do, that's pretty much a headlining set for them. So there's a very good chance we hear not only Stray the Skies, but other songs from this album as well. But they start off with two really good ones.
Knowing my luck, they'll come out and be like, we recorded 6 new songs that you haven't heard yet. And I'll be like, great. It'll be like Rhapsody when I listened to the Luca Turilli, Fabio Leone album last year and they didn't even play anything from it.
Yeah, they're like,
I'm complaining.
Yeah, at least with that though, you love that other stuff. But, we get into a song called Starburn, and this one, the way this intro starts, it always, at least at first I said, oh, well, this is obviously going to be a ballad. I was wrong. That does not last long at all. This is kind of heavy, slower, more deliberate sounding. But I like how the choruses are kind of like a half step higher than the verses. They kind of stand out in that sense. Although they're not entirely dissimilar from each other. Not my favorite track, though, of the first 3. I think that even though the song gets better as you get into it, I definitely prefer the first 2.
You're going to laugh, but this is my song of the week.
Really? For like the whole discography?
Yeah.
Well, we've agreed to this point. We agreed on the EPs. But this one, you and I will differ. Let's give it a listen, and when you come back, I want to hear why. Chris's song of the week, Starburn.
He will never leave.
So after I spent the better part of 60 seconds kind of telling you why this was not my favorite tune, why is this your favorite song in their discography? I'm really curious to know.
I don't know. So we move on to the next track. Honestly, when the first week that I was listening to all the earlier stuff, this song I just kept going back to, and I just love the chorus is like this hard rock new wave. It's got this new wave vibe from the 80s, but it's like a hard rock, prog metal kind of vibe to it. And as much as I enjoyed everything else I listened to, this was the song that I just kept thinking of, like that I would go back to and just be like, yeah, this is, I don't know. I just find it's really, the chorus is just so catchy to me. And that, kind of just put it, ahead of the pack for me, but,
nice.
Yeah, I wasn't concerned we were going to choose the same song, so it looks like I wasn't even close to being wrong there.
I would have probably, and objectively, I think I would have picked probably 15 to 18 songs before this one. So that's about half their discography. So I'll just, again, it's not that it was the worst track ever. It just wasn't my favorite, but reasonable minds can differ. And what can I say? We move on to Owls, which is a really aggressive, heavy song at the start. And I like how the keyboards kind of play off the thick guitar sound here. The verses here, in my opinion, have a very 80s new wave vibe to them. Meets Stradivarius's 030366, which we've kind of joked about in the past as one of the worst songs ever written. But for some reason here, it actually kind of works. And I actually enjoy this tune a lot. It's odd, but I like it. And there's some really cool bass lines in the pre-chorus and whatnot. This is a diverse tune, and the outro reminds me of Pink Floyd, which I'll give them credit for that. That I liked as well. This is a good song. I like this a lot.
Some of the vocals gave me like Tears for Fears vibes, like that kind of high-pitched 80s kind of style. But this is just a good example of the way that they can go back and forth between really heavy, crunchy riffs and like really chill and beautiful piano, like proggy piano type music. So I like this song too. It's not quite the magnum opus of the previous tune, but I do like this one a lot. I'm
just got an email from the band. They don't understand why I'm looking at this now. They don't understand why you picked Starburn either. So it's not just me. No.
We'll defer to Tyler on this one. He's our resident VOLA fanatic. So
yes.
We'll see what he has to say.
I'd love to hear his expert opinion.
I'm wondering if I maybe rated this album higher than you. We'll find out at the end, but it's possible. It's possible. Yeah. Talk to me about the next track, Your Mind is a Helpless Dreamer. This one I think is a little bit more upbeat, but very low-end heavy. It's obviously a very kind of dark tune. Your thoughts on this? I got Voyager vibes, especially towards the beginning of the song. The way that it just kind of came flying in with those heavy riffs. I feel like that's something that Voyager is doing more in their more modern sound. You didn't really hear a lot of that like real genty, crunchy kind of guitar sound in their earlier works. But again, like with the really nice like keyboard melodies and again another track where it's like it's super heavy and then it kind of chills out for a little bit, and I feel like that's kind of the vibe in general on this album. Is it's a lot of
in and out.
Like back and forth between like real heavy and this is why to me it's like, how do you leave this band off of a metal registry? Like there's
this tune in particular
metal elements that this band's showing.
And it's funny. This is a song I'd like to see live. Not my favorite song, but there's the way this song presents with that heavy low end, like I mentioned, and even some of the harsh vocals that they use sprinkled throughout this song. I'd love to see this song live. I will bet good money they're not going to play it. I want to be clear, but I would like to see it live.
I do have some good news for you. They played it in December.
Wow,
most recently.
That would be really. See, I think that would be really cool. I would probably low key mark out if I heard.
There's only one set list for VOLA in 2023, and it was last week.
But it was a festival, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then the one before that was from December. They had a tour in Denmark, so that's kind of the one that I'm looking at, hoping that we'll get
You know,
something
I'm
similar to
looking at a
this.
set list that they did in New York City, and they played here, and I was not able to go to the show. It was last November, and they played it. So now I'm getting excited because at least they haven't released any new albums, so I think there's a reasonable chance that they play this. I think this would be really cool to see live. And I want to be clear, I think a lot of this stuff is going to be even better live than on the album. I just have a haunting suspicion.
You know what? I'm just looking, and they played Enter at that Brooklyn show. So who the hell knows what we're going to see? I'm
excited.
Yeah, me too. I think it's going to be really cool, and I think it's also going to make for a really good band to go in between a really heavy band like the Halo Effect, and then a really like energetic and I think just going to be a very power driven band in Beast in Black. I think that the pacing of the whole day, I think, is going to be really interesting because Seven Kingdoms is a really upbeat power metal band. 0 Hours, a very like technical kind of prog metal band. Then, and then going to, like I said, going to Halo Effect, which we talked about at length. And I'm getting pretty pumped for this night at Prog Power. Which again was the whole point.
Yeah, mission accomplished. I would say. As we kind of journey through the back end of this album, the next track is Emily, and that's a name that you're intimately familiar with. But we're going to talk about the song, not your dating history. So let's talk about Emily.
That'll be a whole other podcast.
That's for the Patreon, but I digress.
That's going to be for the mental exchange.
Talk to me about Emily. What are your thoughts on this ballad?
It's I'm not going to let the name spoil it, but it's just very like soft and mellow. It's a real turnaround from pretty much everything we've heard on this album up to this point, which is a lot of basically mid-tempo and then just crunchy guitars. But this is like really very returning back to that kind of indie rock vibe that I mentioned earlier. It's fine. I didn't love it. What about you? Did it stick out to you in any sort of way?
It was short and sweet. I thought the vocals were very emotional. So for that, I give them a lot of credit.
It felt like a segue in a lot of ways.
I would agree with that. I thought the percussion was very good. But for some reason, and maybe it was just my copy of it, but it sounded very fuzzy in places. And I didn't know if that was intentional, almost like voiding this girl out of his life or something like that. But I didn't love the mix, although maybe there's a reason for it. I just don't know. I prefer the next track, which is Gutter Moon. Gutter Moon has a really cool keyboard intro, and I love how the guitars kick in, but yet the keyboards still remain very, very much up in front. If I had to pick a song of the week from the disc, this probably would have been it. There's this odd quirkiness that I love, and it in many ways, it harkens back to a band that they sound nothing like, but it reminds me of Moron Police with the quirkiness. Just another band that we've talked about in the past. Check that episode out in the archives if you want an interesting discussion. But really, really awesome instrumental sections, top-notch keys. I like this song a lot.
Yeah, this one kind of, I feel like it kind of just sticks to the one sound all the way through for the most part. It's more focused, I guess would be the word. But definitely understand why you would like this. It's just a really solid tune start to finish. It just brings it the whole way through. I really enjoy that the keys towards the end do have that kind of quirky Moron Police-esque. Never thought I'd use a Moron Police-esque as a way to describe something, but here we are. But yeah, good, cool tune. Cool tune on a really enjoyable album thus far.
Yeah, and like I said, I think very different from the two that would come after it. But as we get towards the back end of this one, A Stare Without Eyes, this is a very groovy tune, and another one that I kind of felt myself moving to as I gave it a listen. If you're not a fan of thick guitars, you can move on from this one. You will probably not like this song. but it has this weird, quiet bridge that I thought was provided at least some contrast to that thick sound. And then all of a sudden it comes back with this like scream and this really heavy passage before the final chorus. A good song. I like this track.
It reminded me of just like a Voyager song where like Alex would just scream at some point.
Yeah,
like,
that sounds about right. I agree with that.
Just another good kind of catchy proggy tune. I like this one too. Good tune.
The penultimate track is called "Feed the Creatures." Kind of starts off similar in many ways.
I thought it was "Feed the Creatures."
Oh, I'm sorry, I misread it. No. Shout out to Snody. This one starts off kind of similar as the last track, but the verses here are kind of unique. They're very low sounding with like these interesting vocal effects, and like what I would call syncopated drumming. It's kind of interesting. And then you would never think of it as a ballad, but then all of a sudden, like halfway through, it really picks up and it goes in and out in many ways, like weaving in and out throughout. An interesting song. I don't love it, but I appreciate what they're trying to do here.
Yeah, this was one of my favorites on the album as well. And I think a lot, again, it's like my track of the week. It has kind of a 80s new wave kind of vibe to it, and definitely Voyager. The chorus to me is screams Voyager in all the best ways. Good tune, really good tune. Potentially would be my favorite song on the album, if not for Starburn. Not to be confused with Starburns from Community, which is a guy who grew out his sideburns in the shape of stars.
No, I wasn't going to confuse that. Don't worry. Talk to me about the final track, which is the title track, In Mazes. What do you think of that?
It has like this almost like 60s kind of like organ sound. I don't know, or some sort of whatever patch they're using on their keyboard.
Oh, like a Mellotron type of thing.
Yeah. It's almost, I don't know, maybe, I don't know if confusing it with like a Monkees song I've heard once. It's creepy in a lot of ways. And then again, it's just that classic, what's becoming classic VOLA, where it's like, this peaceful kind of like, sailing on the Prague ship. And then all of a sudden you're on the barge to hell. Like all of a sudden it just starts getting like heavy but this one also I think had some new wave vibes to it. And for that reason, I liked it a lot, and I thought it made for a good final song. It's probably in my top 3 songs on the album. So the album ended strongly for me.
It's an epic way to end the album for sure. The keys remind me of like almost a circus, like kind of, like this circus vibe. I don't know how else to describe it. And the guitars do a good job of doing that as well. And that vibe kind of continues throughout the rest of the song. I don't love the verses, but I think the chorus is cool, and it gives me really strong Porcupine Tree vibes. So shout out to Porcupine Tree. A good closing tune on what I can just describe as a good album. And I think it's important to mention that after the recording of this album, the drummer for the band, who was unable to kind of go out on tour with them at the time, left the band, and he was replaced by Adam Janzi, who's their current drummer. So like that was a big kind of a pivotal moment for the band as they've come together. But before we get to their follow-up release, which would, believe it or not, come out just 3 years later, give me a score on In Mazes. What do you think of this album?
I gave it a 7.875. I had a
solid score.
In between 7.75 and 8. I really enjoyed it. And I thought it was a really very good debut album if you're not going to take those EPs into consideration. Like, this is their debut full-length album, and I thought it was really kind of cool. And unlike the following 2 albums, I think it had a really distinct kind of style that they didn't really repeat going forward.
No, this was kind of the end of an era, like I alluded to earlier. For me, this is a 7. It's a good album. I can easily listen to it, but I don't know that I would put it up there with the next 2, which are markedly better, in my opinion. Although there are elements on here that they wouldn't go back to, but that I enjoy. So it's kind of a bittersweet end to an era. And that brings us to 2018, which is when I first heard of the band with applause of a distant crowd. I don't know that I would call it their magnum opus, but for me, this was the high watermark because I heard this album and I fell in love with the band right away, or at least with this album. I thought this was a really, really good release. Did you find it difficult to transition to what can otherwise be described as just a different sound for the band?
At first, absolutely yes. It was almost like it was too calm compared to the first album. But honestly, by the fourth, fifth, sixth, I think I listened to it 6 times.
Wow.
I started to really appreciate the little nuances that were going on that I just wasn't really grabbing at the beginning. And there's just a what I would call an eventual accessibility.
That's an oxymoron I haven't heard.
I find it very accessible, but it just took me a little while to get there. And now that I go back to it, I'm like, yeah, this is really like easy
listening.
Yeah, it's easy to listen to. I am not going to be super disappointed with whatever it is they choose to play live. I think whatever it is they pick, it's going to be a really nice mix of their catalog. But I grew to really enjoy this album as I listened to it. If I had gone off of like my first or second listens, I probably would have ranked it fairly lower than the first album. But I don't think that that's going to be the case.
Yeah, and I think that if we wanted to, we could probably do 3 hours on this. And I say that to say there are more details about this band if you go to their website and they talk about the process of the recording and the inspiration behind a lot of this stuff. But in the interest of time, I would just say go to VOLA's homepage. It's in the links below. You get even more detail about what was going on for the band and why this album was released and why they kind of went in a different direction. But for now, say that to say, a lot of good details there, but let's kind of just get into the album. I was jarred by the gentiness of some of the earlier material. So when I started with this is all I knew from the band. So it was kind of the opposite for me. The first track, We Are Thin Air, heavy, but not genty. And to that, I think it's a great opener, very catchy verses, a nice clean sound, especially to the guitars. I love the vocal effects throughout, and I just like the Anathema vibe here. A good opening song for sure.
Yeah, it's funny because like I had to stop myself every time the beginning of the song would start because that marked the end of my first week listening. So when I got to my second week of listening, I like just knew the beginning of this song so well. I was really curious to see how the rest of the song would end up going, and I like this one a lot. It's it has just a very mellow kind of like prog vibe to it, but it's very the keyboards kind of lead the way, and it just works for me. I think this is a really cool tune, and I just enjoy I really just enjoy it. When keys are involved and they're done well, like it's an easy sell for me, and so this is no different.
And it's for that reason why I thought Ghosts, the following track, would be your song of the week. That's because the keyboard intro here is just infectiously catchy. It was definitely a song of the week contender for me. I did not choose it, but I easily could have. I can't wait to hear this song live. Phenomenal percussion, great bass lines, and although it's so simple in spots, it's really effective and just kind of sucks you in. And I love how there's like a bit of a dichotomy on this track where it gets kind of low and soft at certain points, and then it picks up during the verses and comes back. Beautiful tune, just a beautiful tune. And if I would have guessed your song of the week, I would have guessed this one.
It's definitely in my top 2 or 3 on this album. I like this song a lot, and I would be very pleased to hear it in a live setting. But yeah, I mean that the key intro just brings you right in. This was one of I think the most accessible songs on this album, because you just, as soon as it starts, you're hooked in. It kind of slows down a bit and goes into like that really mellow kind of prog rock verses, but then when the chorus comes back, it goes back to that really catchy keyboard riff from the beginning. So really cool tune. I like this one a lot. You were right to think that I would like this one.
Whereas I think the next track, Smart Friend, is maybe not your favorite, and I'll just say that for a couple of reasons. Number one, it almost has like this hip hop beat at the beginning, and there's actually some like rapped vocals on here, which is definitely different. Funky, right? Like this is like almost Red Hot Chili Peppers-esque because of that just funky beat they laid down, but it's heavy with down-tuned guitars, and it almost has like a sludgy feel to it. I could appreciate that they were trying to do something different here. It just never really clicked for me, although I think the chorus is pretty good. More of an experimental tune, in my opinion.
There's this keyboard. I don't know. I guess you'd call it a riff that kind of that's going on. That sounds like it came out of like Final Fantasy VII, like this kind of like dystopian future keyboard keyboard patch or whatever. But yeah, I agree that this is another one of those songs where it kind of bounces around from that like heavy kind of genty, crunchy guitar style, then to like, you know, kind of real quiet and mellow. I feel like Nirvana would have liked Vola, but that's neither here nor there. But I think the preceding and the following song are a little bit more my speed. But it's a good song, not my favorite though.
Well, I guess it's time for us to take a dip in the Ruby pool. After finally figuring out what the hell Pat meant for all those years, your thoughts on this ballad?
His repetitiveness was not enough to ruin the song for me.
Shockingly.
Yeah, I know. Now I'm going to have to spend 4 days in Atlanta hearing him say, keep dipping. But, just a really chill song. Like Ruby Pool is really kind of like the perfect title, because it kind of feels like if there was such a thing as a Ruby Pool, that's kind of what it feels like, I guess. I don't know. Just a really mellow song, but not boring. Like you would think that a song like this might be kind of boring. I think I thought it was boring when I first heard it, and it really grew on me as the more I listened to it. It's not like any of the other songs where eventually like some heavy guitars are going to come flying in or something heavy is going to happen. It stays pretty chill all the way through.
I'd argue it's probably their best ballad up to this point. Maybe their best ballad in their discography. I have to give that some more thought, but really, really simple, effective keyboards that help drive this thing along. A solid tune. I like it. I really like the next one, Alien Shivers. This song has almost like a techno vibe to it, which I thought was really, really cool. And I think that's partially because of the keyboard patches and also because of the percussion. It almost reminds me of Labyrinth, the way that they did the whole techno thing for a while. And you know, when we talked with Olaf Thorson about that, that was intentional. So I have to think that it was probably intentional here as well. Also, one of my favorite choruses on the album. So if you like a sing-along chorus, this is probably a good one to kind of sink your teeth into. I have a feeling you like this one too.
I had the chorus of this song stuck in my head all night, actually, before we sat down. But yeah, another really cool tune. It has that kind of chill Ruby Pool vibe to it, but it does actually kick into a little bit more of that kind of heavier chorus with the heavier guitars and stuff. So yeah, good tune, probably on the upper end of songs that I enjoyed from this album.
And interestingly enough, we talk sometimes about song placement. They decided to go with the second of 3 ballads really in a row with Vertigo, the next track, which I don't know. For me, I was kind of surprised that they would do another ballad so soon after Ruby Pool. I definitely prefer the former to this one. I don't know. It's this really kind of mellow track, almost like a vocal solo at the start. Not just kind of nondescript, I guess is the word I would use. So I would say nondescript to describe something. So take that as take that as you will. But not my favorite ballad, but certainly nothing that you have to skip.
It's oxymoron night here at the Metal Exchange. Yeah, it felt like a really long like segue. Honestly, it's almost it's actually over 4 minutes long, but it feels like it never really gets started. It's just it reminds me a bit of the Emily track, where it's just kind of quiet and atmospheric, but it doesn't really have anything that kind of grabs you. So yeah, it's just kind of there for me.
So we have 2 songs left on this album. The next one is called Still, and this one's a bit of an oddball too. I hear Pearl Jam through this thing, like through and through. It starts with this really simple riff and vocals, a great melodic chorus, and eventually about 4 minutes in, it kind of picks up. But there's something about this track that I just kept going back to. I like this one a lot, and I feel like it's a hidden gem kind of on the back end of the album.
I like this one too. Although there should be 3 more songs.
Oh, you're right. The reason I say that is because the next track is the title track. But
okay.
No, there's 3 more. I stand corrected.
Yeah, I like this one too. Again, it has kind of a purveying keyboard sound that kind of holds it all together. Yeah, good tune, solid tune. Although I like the next one even more.
I think Applause of a Distant Crowd is one of their best tunes. I like when prog bands don't have to write 13-minute songs. I mean, I enjoy 13-minute songs, but here they cram a lot into this quote-unquote epic song. And I say quote-unquote because the reality is this is not a long song at all. What is it? 5.5 minutes long, but there's a lot going on here. The verses remind me of like an Enchant or the Flower Kings, one of those prog rock bands. And then, I guess it just kind of builds and builds to like a big chorus. So it's just an awesome song. I like this one a lot, and I found it to be very different from the rest of the songs on the album.
I'm right there with you. I like whatever you want to call that kind of like that sound that at the beginning of it. I assume it's a synthesized sound, but and then that guitar riff, like it just reminds me of like a early 2000s like alt rock guitar tone. Probably the band I'm thinking of is escaping me, but like it sounds like something off of like one of the NHL soundtracks from like 03 or 04 or something like that. But then it like again goes back to like that kind of Ruby Pool-esque kind of chill, chilling with Vola kind of vibe, and then halfway through the song the guitars come back and we're off to the races with the guitars and the keys just kind of leading the way. One of my favorite songs on this one for sure, probably within my top 3.
Yeah, no argument for me. The next track is a song called Whaler, and I have to think that this is a tribute to Kevin Dineen, but I don't know that for sure. That being said, shout out to all of our listeners up in Hartford. What are your thoughts on this tune?
This is Ray Ferraro's favorite Vola song. This is like one of the Vola songs that sounds just like a straight up metal tune. Like it kicks in, and this sounds like a prog metal song, not a prog rock song.
So to that end, this is the one track that actually reminds me of Soen. So if you actually said one sounds like the other, I'd agree with you. This sounds like Soen, but no, it's Vola. The chorus does a nice job of separating itself from the verses. I don't like when verses and choruses kind of blend into one another. I like when there's distinction, and you definitely get this on this track. Kind of deliberate sounding. Ron Francis would be very happy with this one. There's no doubt about it. Moby Dick references aside, Whaler, pretty good tune.
Yeah, I think Russ Courtnall and Brad Shaw would definitely agree with Terry Yake when they said that this is definitely probably one of the best Vola songs of all time. Peter Sidorkowitz as well really was a big fan. It's probably that joke definitely went over a lot of people's heads. Greg Romano, if you're listening, I know you're a Craig and Ryan, I know you guys know what's up. But in all seriousness, it's another one of the better songs on the album, in my opinion, and arguably the most metal song, like just kind of the most straight up prog metal tune on the album.
Yeah, and then provides a nice contrast to Green Screen Mother, which is really just a piano ballad to end it. Kind of an outro more than anything else. I don't have many strong thoughts other than cool way to end the album and kind of just a way to take you down after Whaler.
I didn't have the time, unfortunately, but I'm really interested in what some of the lyrical content was aiming at, because at least for the applause of a distant crowd, I actually looked up the lyrics for that, and I thought it was rather funny in parts, but it just it felt to me like it was like the adulation that people are looking for via social media is
Yes.
like the applause of a distant crowd. And Green Screen Mother also kind of isn't too subtle, I think, in the name of the title, but I would be curious kind of where their heads were at in a lyrical sense when they were making this album, because it seems to have a theme, but I just unfortunately...
No, you hit the nail on the head. They even say on their website that this album title was a metaphor derived from the relationship with social media and how we can appear close but actually be miles apart. And they get into more detail, as I said, but I'll just read one quote because it's just right on point with what you were saying. Quote, "We spend a lot of time trying to present ourselves in a flattering light in the pursuit of continuous applause, even if it's a distant applause from those you may not connect with away from the screens." I mean, you hit the nail on the head with this. So excellent analysis.
It's just kind of what I picked up from the title track, because the idea of like taking pictures of your food and stuff, which, by the way, guilty as charged, but I just kind of got that vibe from the lyrics, and I just thought it was really really interesting, and I'd like to take more time to learn a bit more about VOLA's lyrical content, not just on this album, but on all their albums.
Yeah, well said. What do you rank this album? The first one I ever heard, for sure. I'm curious to hear whether or not it competes with the debut.
I liked it slightly less, and I think it's mostly because there was, I think, just a couple of tracks that were kind of a little bit, I guess, nondescript was the word that you had used. So I have it just at 7.5, right underneath in Mazes. But again, overall, I liked it quite a bit.
I gave it an 8. It's probably my favorite album of theirs. A really, really enjoyable listen. And again, I might be a little jaded or because this is the sound that I knew. I was not prepared in many ways for what came before it. So that might be playing into my score at least a little bit. There's a bias there, but I think it is just a really great album. Followed up by their 2021 release, Witness, which again, I obviously liked. It was in my top 50. How much I liked it? Well, we'll get to that shortly. But did you have any strong impressions of Witness on the heels of Applause?
I kind of felt similarly about it when I listened to them both at the beginning. I think, though, that I think I may like this a tad bit more after listening to it, but I think discussing it will finalize my opinion on that. But I found this one to be really enjoyable to go back to. And as I'm re-listening to it as we speak, I feel that the same way. So I'm really interested to see where you have this in comparison to the previous two albums and the EPs.
Yeah, well, let's get into it. I think that they go with Jacob Hansen to kind of mix and master this thing, which is never a bad thing. I think he's not only one of the most famous producers in the scene, but he's usually really, really good at what he does. Although what's interesting is I know him more as like kind of the power metal guy or doing the Pyramids and stuff like that. But here he is, on a prog rock album. And what's different here is that the songs, by and large, are just a little bit longer in length. Not much, but you got a lot of songs that are 4.5, 5 minutes long, whereas, earlier on in the career, I think that they were more at the 4 minute mark. So they kind of expanded the scope of some of these songs. But I think that the sound is really just a continuation of the prior album. And I'll be curious to see if their future albums continue to go in that direction, or do they zag again when everyone thinks they're going to zig. Which is ironic because the opening track is called Straight Lines, and I swear to God I didn't plan that whole thing. I swear that just came to me.
Sure.
Yeah, well, that was one of the most creative things I ever didn't intend to do. This is one of my favorites on the album. I thought it was just a really tight sound, a touch of djent, but not like earlier on in their career. Just really, really groovy verses with awesome keyboard samples, and this like whimsical pre-chorus that leads up to this big, powerful melodic chorus that I'm a sucker for. Great song. Hope they play it live. Trust they will.
Yeah, keys definitely, again, give me that kind of 80s pop kind of vibe. But yeah, this is, I feel like, I don't know if we're going to like continue down this road on this album, but this feels like a more straightforward song than quite a bit of the songs on the previous album. So I let's see if VOLA kind of does a little bit more of a straightforward kind of thing. I guess considering that there's like a guy rapping at some point, maybe it's not that straightforward. But I thought this was a pretty straightforward song in a good way.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I think that I don't think the whole album is that way though. I think that there are some detours along the way, and quite frankly, I think Head Mounted Sideways, the second track, is an example of that. It kind of starts with this industrial feel again. Also djenty in many ways, but there's these weird vocal effects that they have. It almost makes it sound like it was recorded underwater, but that's only in the beginning because it certainly gets better after that. And it has this very, it's a good chorus, but the verses are very Porcupine Tree sounding to me. And I like that a lot. So it's a good track. It's just, I wouldn't say it's as direct or straightforward as Straight Lines.
Yeah, agreed. I do believe the band does say that they are very influenced by Steven Wilson, so it definitely makes sense bringing up Porcupine Tree. Yeah, this is like a weird ass song, and then like the chorus kicks in, and it's just kind of like, oh yeah, it's just VOLA. But like yeah, like everything you said about like the industrial things, and it's got almost like I picture like Jordan Rudess where he's talking into that voice modulator or whatever.
Oh yeah, like they used to do like Bon Jovi would do before.
Yeah, he looks like Ross from Friends. That's a cut that some people may get the reference to, but yeah, definitely less straightforward than the last track, but pretty good tune. I think this was a single for the band as well. Might have been the first single from this album, if I'm correct. I believe Straight Lines was the next single.
And we get to 24 Light Years,
which is the third single, actually.
So they're coming in hot right off the bat with this thing. What do you think of this tune?
Let's see. How do I don't know that I have the musical knowledge to describe this song in the way that I would feel comfortable doing, but I like the way that the drum fills are that kind of build up the song. It's really it's a really cool song for being such a chill tune. I like this one quite a bit, actually.
So do I. And even though
I liked a lot where it picks up in the middle too and has a little bit more beefiness to it. It's a really cool tune.
I think it's very underrated in many ways. I know it was a single, but I've never heard anyone talk about this. I'm looking forward to seeing it live. To me, it was in contention for Song of the Week along with a couple of other tracks. I'm not choosing it, but I thought about it. Really, really beautiful melodies, thought-provoking lyrics, and it's kind of builds to an instrumental section, which is actually the payoff, which is not something you see all the time. But I like this song a lot.
Yeah, absolutely well said. I'm right there with you. It gets a little weird on the next one, though, huh?
Yeah, this is. I mean, we touched upon some techno before, but here it really comes out in full force and effect. This one is a bit of a miss for me. It is mid-paced. It's anthemic. It's just a little repetitive for my taste, and I just don't understand the rap. I guess I don't know why they did it. Not that I can't get behind it.
It's going to be better when Milton does the rap parts on stage at Prague Power, like I suggested.
I will be front and center for that. That I can't wait for. Hopefully, he knows how to play keyboards for Beast in Black as well. But if he'll have to go from singing to playing keyboards for them. But
if Danny from Voyager can do it, I mean.
I think I think the song ends strong, but I just don't really know what to make of it.
Yeah, it grew on me a bit. At first, I don't think I liked it at all. It kind of reminded me of like Everlast, if you remember that song, "What It's Like."
Unfortunately,
really that kind of deep. It's not even. I don't know. At first, I didn't think it was rapping. It's almost like he's just talking with like a really deep voice. I guess maybe that's what rap is. I don't know, but it's odd. But I also think the chorus is really good. It's really powerful. So like the song is just kind of weird. The rapping / talking sections were performed by Shaman, which I think are a 2-person. I don't know if you call it a rap group or whatever. I don't know. I didn't do as much research on Shaman as I would have liked, and being that Andre Matos isn't part of it, it was really not that fascinating to me. But it is a really interesting song. It's definitely one of the weirdest. The weird like spooky keyboard vibe that is at the beginning of the song reminded me of some of the creepier scenes on the show Lost, which is one of my all-time favorite TV shows. So yeah, I'm kind of with you. I don't really know what to make of the song, but it's I think the chorus really holds it up. But it is interesting that they kind of went this way, where like the verses are a little bit more of these like kind of talk raps with this really like deep voiced fella. Interesting. It's an interesting tune.
Yeah, well said. I still don't know what to make of it. I know a lot more about Freak, which is the next song. It's another ballad. It's beautifully done. It's kind of easy listening in many ways. I don't think it's their best ballad, but it certainly deserves to be on the album.
I agree 100%. Again, it's another one of those just similar to Ruby Pool. It's just kind of chill all the way through. I don't think it's as good of a song as Ruby Pool, but it's solid. I think it's kind of needed after that like opus of previously where there was just a lot going on. I really like the next track though, Napalm. What are your thoughts on this one? Definitely
more upbeat. The keyboards almost remind me of like lasers, the way that they're kind of out there. This is one of those songs that as I was typing up my notes, I was moving my head to it. I'm like, I think I'm subconsciously moving to the beat. So that's definitely a good sign. I don't think it's their best tune, but I definitely thought it was solid enough. My one gripe, it was a little long in the tooth. I thought it was a bit too repetitive, especially towards the end, but good enough, like a decent song.
Well, as this is tending to go with us, this is my favorite song on this album.
Really? Wow. All right. So we both like the band. We just have completely different taste in what we like. That's okay.
Yeah. They're going to be watching us in the crowd while they're playing, and they're like, this one guy only likes half the songs, the other guy likes the other half. They haven't agreed on anything yet.
But between the two of them, they like the whole set.
Hope they never do a podcast together.
What is it about this song that you like so much?
I think it's just again, like the keys are so catchy, like right from the beginning, much like Starburn. It just it hooks me in, and I'm hooked. It's again, I don't think I actually like said if I had a favorite song from the Applause album. It's really close. Ghosts is definitely up there. Probably Ghost is, yeah, probably say Ghost is my favorite. And I think that all three of my favorite songs on these three albums all kind of have a similar, just super catchy, keyboard driven, just the entire song is pretty keyboard driven, but it has a keyboard riff at the beginning that hooks you in. And again, it's one of the more, I think, catchier choruses of the VOLA catalog. So I like this one a lot.
Yeah, I get it. I do. We go to Future Bird, which is a really strong start to this tune. I think good riff, great keys. I think the verses, the word I would use is intriguing. Like, I don't really know what to make of it, but it kind of makes you want to hear more. And then a strong chorus, as you kind of get to expect from this band. I think this is an underrated song in many ways. Never hear anyone talk about this one either. But as we get towards the end of this album, this is a good one.
The first 20 seconds of keyboards sound like a power metal song. Like,
Yeah.
It's like the first time that I got power metal vibes from this band. It was almost like something out of like the Power Quest playbook. And then it just goes into like chill VOLA, like, it's like, there they are. They were
gone but not forgotten.
Yeah, it's like you're waiting for like Vince McMahon to pull the hood out and be like, it was me the whole time. But yeah,
that or the Scooby-Doo thing where they pull the mask off and it's like the same person and they're all pointing at each other.
Yeah, it's just VOLA every time. Yeah. I like this one a lot too. Probably in my top 3 or 4 songs on this album. Another good song. I was just really surprised at how many songs I like by this band that were just kind of a mid-tempo kind of song, but the songs are so interesting that it doesn't matter that it's not fast-paced, and there'll be plenty of that when the band goes on after them. But I'm again, like I said before, I'm really, really looking forward to seeing this band live.
And I was going to ask at the end, but we're almost there. Do I have a commitment from you that you're going to see this set?
Oh, without a doubt, yeah. I mean, I'm locked in for them and Halo Effect, which was really the reason why I wanted to talk about both bands. Beast in Black was just a kind of a exercise in selfishness, being that I was already a big fan.
I knew every song anyway.
Yeah, and I think I'm actually more excited even still. So, but now those top 3 bands, I'm locked in for those 3 for sure.
All right, so first round's on me, and then we'll go from there. Let's finish up this album because in many ways, listening as many times as I did this week, it actually solidified my thoughts, and I'll kind of sum up and I'll give my summation at the end. But Stone Leader Falling Down is kind of nothing you haven't heard from them already. It's genty, it's kind of straightforward, a melodic chorus that's, believe it or not, even more keyboard driven than some of the others, which says something given the nature of the band. I would say this is one of their more average tunes. It's certainly not at the bottom of the totem pole, but I don't think it's their best, but well placed at the back end of the album.
Yeah, I agree. I like this one quite a bit. Probably one of my more liked songs on this album, and I think it might even be better in a live setting. But really good tune. I think that the beginning of this album is solid, but I think the last 4 tracks on this album are really strong. I think they really end strongly, and I would have to assume that the next track is your song of the week. Otherwise, you want to throw a curveball and make it a sewing song.
I did post their new single earlier today, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, Inside Your Fur is my song of the week. I will share my thoughts, but we haven't heard some music in a while. Let's give it a listen.
There you go.
right. So I definitely, in my opinion, saved the best for last. I got to be honest with you. When I chose this song as the song of the week, I didn't even realize that I had used it on my old playlist as the best song from this album. So this reinforced everything because I completely forgot about that. What a great closing tune. The keyboards that drive this are top notch. It's just such a slow build, but to such a great melodic chorus. And the ending is this trippy sound, but it works so well. I am so looking forward to this song live. I really hope they play it. I suspect they will. But there's just something so catchy about this song that I'd be remiss not to choose it as my song of the week.
Well said. It was the song that I knew the most of by VOLA going into this because I don't remember the reason why I put it on the playlist at the time, because the playlist I put it on was actually before your year-end playlist that was, I think, the following month. So I don't know if somebody just was talking like VOLA's got a new album and this is one of the songs from it, and I just went with it. But it's one of the best songs on the album. I definitely concur there in a really great way to finish things off. Really, like I said, a really strong end of this album. I really like the last 4 songs quite a bit. I thought the beginning of the album was a little bit underwhelming after the previous album and really getting into it, but they really, I thought, rebounded strong at the end here.
So, yeah, I can understand that. To answer your question from earlier, I do like Applause better. I think Witness is a good album. It would still be in my top 50 for that year. I don't know that it moved up or down. Maybe it actually moved up a touch based on the prior listens, but to me, it's a solid 7.5 and an album that I just think is going to come off great live. I'm wondering if you're in the same ballpark or if you're a little higher.
I'm with you. I have it at a 7.375, just a smidge under Applause. Now that I'm looking at it, it actually looks like for me, VOLA has gone down. Not by much. I actually really overall can say that this was a really positive listening experience, and I'm glad that I'm glad that I have something else to be excited about, as if I didn't have enough to be excited about to begin with. But I would hate to think that the band that was going on second to last on Thursday night would be a band that I didn't give a shit about, and that is no longer the case. So I'm looking forward to seeing them. I think it'll be really good, especially after a couple of adult beverages, and I think it'll be a perfect way to not get like burned out before Beast in Black comes out, because I'll be burned out by the time that set's over. But I think this will just be a good, just stand in the crowd with a nice frosty beverage and just bob my head up and down and enjoy what I have to believe are going to be really talented musicians just doing their thing. So
yeah, I think that's a perfect way to close it. I'm not going to talk about any news items this week just because we went a little bit long. But I do want to talk briefly about next week. Next week, it's the first Monday of the month, so we're going to take another Patreon request. I am super excited. Again, no pun intended. But this was an album that I knew we would cover at some point. I can't believe that it came out in 1995. Just I want to be clear about this, and I haven't said the album yet, but this album is almost 30 years old, and the album I'm talking about is what can only be described as one of the 1990s progressive metal masterpieces, and that's Superior's Behind. This is a German band who was around for a spell, really only about 10 years or so, and then kind of faded away. But that's where we're at. We're going to cover Superior's Behind by request. We are very excited about this because even though it's kind of an obscure album, it's an album that we've had in our collection for 25 years. So we know the album, even if we haven't listened to it in some time. And we may even have some interviews lined up for this one, which will be really interesting if that pans out. Because to be honest with you, this is a band that's been lost to time in many ways.
Oh, without a doubt. Especially for me, because I really didn't listen to much beyond this album. Like, I know they released 2 more albums, and I think they have a live album as well, but my Superior knowledge kind of begins and ends with this album. So I am looking forward to talking about it. I listened to it yesterday, and I vaguely remembered a lot of it. The first 2 tracks, for whatever reason, are just embedded in my brain. Like, I know them super well. The rest of the album, I'm going to need to revisit a couple of times, although some of it was just very familiar, but it has been very, very long, maybe more than a decade, maybe 15 years since the last time I listened to this album start to finish. So thank you, Adam, for requesting this. I did reach out to Glenn Harveston from Prog Power because he had booked Superior to play Prog Power 2, which happened to be the first Prog Power that took place in Atlanta at Center Stage, and it would take place there every year up to now. So I was curious about, his thoughts on, what got them on his radar and why he booked them and how he felt about their performance and any stories that he has. So he's going to get back to me with something that we'll read in the episode, but I think that'll be interesting because I think a lot of people kind of forget that they actually did play in the U.S. at Prog Power, and we'll post. There's a pro shot video of one of the songs. We'll post that at some point during the week. From that festival. It, for all I know, it could be the only pro shot Superior live video that exists. Although I'm not going to profess that I actually looked that hard, but yeah, that's going to be really cool. I feel like we've been very modern in our albums lately. I know it's been a lot of retrospectives, but it's been a lot of retrospectives on bands that haven't been around for that long. These are bands that started years after Superior was long retired. So we're heading back to the past, and another one from the vaunted high school years.
Nice. I like it. I'll come back the following week with another album of my choice, and we will roll into September. But I've got some good stuff planned for the next couple of albums. I haven't figured out what I'm going to choose for my next album, but I know what I'm going to choose for the album after that. I'll just float that.
Yeah, I mean, we've had our schedule pretty much mapped out for a month, so now we kind of can go back to
surprises,
what we do. So yeah, August should be fun. I have not decided if I'm going to choose another Prog Power band, but if I do, it'll probably just be one album. But I'm thinking I might just call it a day. I put my Prog Power playlist up on Spotify. Chances are, if you're in any of the Prog Power groups, you saw I posted it there. I had some very positive comments from people that were very thankful that somebody went out of their way to do that. But the reason I bring that up is because I think for bands like the Cryptex and Caligula's Horse and Poverty's No Crime, I think I'm just going to listen to some of their best songs for like an hour to an hour and 15 minutes and kind of just gauge my thoughts based on that. I don't know that I can stomach another full discography by anybody. So we did a lot of albums this month. So cheers to you. That was a hell of a run, and we ended it with what I would argue the most intense catalog, which is VOLA. But I'm just really happy that I ended up enjoying them as much as I did. So yes, you have my attendance guaranteed on Thursday night at Prog Power. I will be there for VOLA. Mission
accomplished. Enjoy the week, my friend, and let's go listen to some German prog.
That reminds me. You can't spell Favola without VOLA. So Nick, we'll hope to be seeing you on Thursday night at Prog Power.
Cheers, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.
Take care, buddy.